Hello, good evening and a very warm welcome to Newsline Live. We're broadcasting as we almost always do from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And in spite of over 5 months of a new president and several assurances that the economy is actually getting better, Sri Lanka has not really had much luck. And we are still, despite the absence of queues by and large for fuel, we are still unable to buy the fuel that we need. The economy has contracted from 80 billion to around 70, and Sri Lanka has now started on yet another ambitious plan of recovery. Sri Lanka attempts to recover with an ambitious tax hike. Let's see if this is going to be enough, whether it is achievable, or whether it's one more thing that is merely promises and promises, but resulting in zilch. Let's find out, shall we? Our guest this evening is the tax expert, Mr. N.R. Gajendran. Very good evening to you, Mr. Gajendran.
Good evening for us.
Sri Lanka attempts recovery with an ambitious tax hike. Achievable?
Well, the revenue for 2022 is about 2 trillion.
Right.
And what is expected for 23 is about 1.34 trillion.
More.
69% more than the 2020.
69% more than the 2 trillion we're collecting now.
Yeah.
In your opinion, is it something that can be collected?
Well, in the past, historically, revenues have been overstated in the budgets. The expenditure has been understated. So this year can't be an exception. And 69% is a humongous amount of increase in just 1 year, even though tax rates have been revised substantially. Whether they can, realize that in its full perspective is going to be daunting.
It's going to be daunting, but Mr. Gajendran, is the government merely trotting out, putting forth figures in the hope that the people will just forget about everything and just get used to the hardship, get used to the lack of food, get used to the high cost of food, and somehow, in true Sri Lankan grit style, simply carry on?
We, in 2019, beginning 2020, we precipitously slashed the taxes. And now we are just increased it overnight.
Where's the responsibility of those that took us down this route? Where is it? If it was in a corporate, and if the finance director or the group finance man made such a monumental blunder, the board will shove him out as soon as he's, found out.
Very valid point for us. I think under midst of all these challenges and crises, there seems to be some hope, because in 2 judgments in the recent past, the judiciary, the Supreme Court, one was on the VAT bill.
Yeah.
And the other one was in the Inland Revenue Bill. Though the relief was not significant from the petitioner's point of view, because it was nothing unconstitutional, but 2 benches. One, the first under for the VAT bill, it was chaired by the Chief Justice, Honorable Chief Justice. This was stated in the last paragraph.
Please read it, please.
Before we conclude, this is, I'm quoting from the
from the order.
The order. This is not that's right. This is an order made on the constitutionality, which was delivered to the Speaker.
Right.
Yeah. Before we conclude, we must state that the wide latitude given to the legislature to impose taxes on the recommendation of the executive brings with it a whole host of responsibilities and duties. both for the legislature and to the executive. The legislature, entrusted with the responsibility of being in full control of the public finance, must demand that the executive rationalize to its satisfaction the necessity for a particular tax and the manner in which the money raised by such tax will be expended. Executive, on the other hand, must inter alia act with great responsibility, manage all resources frugally without wastage, and ensure that monies generated by taxation are used to direct economic activity in such a manner that would benefit all citizens of the country. In this context, a greater responsibility lies on the executive and the administrative institutions to act in accordance with their mandate in the performance of the duties. This last sentence is very important for us. The court shall continue to exercise constitutional role as sentinel on the QVV over the executive and administrative action. If I can replace that with that English term for the Latin term,
the constitutional role,
the court shall continue to exercise the constitutional role as the watchful guardian over the executive and the administrative actions. So the court is saying that, look here, we are going to watch you.
We are watching what you're doing.
And the other case, which is smaller paragraph, another bench, another three, so really 6 judges of the Supreme Court have given such almost a sort of a casting impression on the role of the judiciary and how we are the watchful guardian on the activities of the legislature, executive, and the administrative institutions. This goes, nevertheless, this is all the last paragraphs. Nevertheless, we are mindful that the court is the last bulwark to protect the rule of law and prevent any breach of trust. Corruption and wastage of public finance must be addressed and violators dealt according to the law, irrespective of the standings. In order to do so, jurisdiction of the courts must be properly invoked in appropriate proceedings. What they are saying is people who have to invoke the jurisdiction of the court
must do so
of this thing. I mean, so if there is going to be judicial review on some of these administrative actions or the executive's decisions and the legislator, once it's made a law, you can't do anything about it. As the court says, there is ample room and latitude to impose taxes. Basically any tax generally is unpleasant. Why is it unpleasant? Your hard-earned money, by legislature, you are coming and taking it away from you. If that not for the law, it will be sort of highway robbery or extortion. No one is going to want to part away with your hard-earned money or the monies that they have saved. But when the tax becomes unbearable, which I can explain, I will explain my point of view why it's unbearable. That's what people are saying. Then it will lose its legitimacy. It will lose its mandate. And when it loses that mandate, it will not help the governments, any government. It will destroy them. So if the earlier government made a hash of a thing by slashing taxes overnight, just with the stroke of a pen, here they are making a challenging decision to impose taxes. And imposition is coming not a time that we can say it's befitting, because the people's expenditure, cost of living, has gone through the roof for 2 reasons mainly. One is the rupee depreciated almost 100%. And thereafter there are demand and supply mismatches, which is causing your purchasing power to deplete even further. So if you had 100,000 rupees, roughly, my analysis is if you had 100,000 rupees, forget all the income taxes, you would have paid 8% tax on the consumption and you would have had 92. Now the consumption tax you pay almost 20%. VAT is 15%, social security contribution is 2.5%, the cascading effect is 8-20. then you have only 80. The purchasing power, because of the rupee depreciation, is halved, so that will come to 40. In another half, it will be almost 20 million or 20,000 out of 80 million. So it is, if you have 100,000 rupees, if you are using for consumption before, now when you use effectively, you have 20,000 rupees. So much so, one of the senior doctors has remarked recently, UK is spending, after pruning and going for alternatives, he is spending about 80% of his, 75 to 80% of his income on basic living expenses. He has asked the question, where do I go to pay the taxes? So it's going to be a telling effect on the people. Hope this produces the results what we are expecting, because people will have to decide whether they have to pay the income tax or they have to look after their basic necessities.
Mr. Gajendran, listen to this. It's coming from out there, from the public. Thank you for sending us your messages. You can SMS us directly right here by sending an SMS or WhatsApp 0772 300 305. And I simply must read this. I don't mind paying any amount of taxes in principle. However, having to pay even a cent to those uneducated bandits in power makes me cringe and nauseous.
That they have not come there on their own. People who have put them there. Of course, you might say, one might say, look here, these are the guys who are presented to us. But I think next time when you go for the round of voting or election, you have to see that you are not going to pick people the way it has been referred to, the guys who have been referred to like this by that viewer. So it is, don't blame them.
Blame yourselves?
Yeah, we have to be blamed.
But I mean, that's an easy answer. And somebody else is saying, could you please read it out again? I will read it out again. Shall I?
Yeah, please.
This is I'm reading out from a order of the Supreme Court in terms of the first one.
First one is the VAT bill.
The VAT bill.
Yes.
And here we go. This is the end, the last bit. Before we conclude, we must state that the wide latitude given to the legislature to impose taxes on the recommendation of the executive brings with it a whole host of responsibilities and duties, both for the legislature and for the executive. The legislature, entrusted with the responsibility of being in full control over public finance, must demand that the executive rationalize to its satisfaction the necessity for a particular tax and the manner in which the monies raised by such taxes would be expended. The executive, on the other hand, must act with great responsibility, manage all resources frugally and without wastage, and ensure that the monies generated by taxation are used to direct economic activity in such a manner that would benefit all citizens of this country. In this context, a greater responsibility lies on executive and administrative institutions to act in accordance with their mandate in the performance of their duties. This court shall continue to exercise its constitutional role as the watchful guardian over executive and administrative action. Bravo, bravo, bravo to the Supreme Court, because it's high time that the governments of the day realize that just because they can impose taxes doesn't mean that they impose taxes without being accountable for how they spend our money. Do you agree?
Very good. You read it. You said it better than me. Why don't you read that other decision also?
I will. May I borrow it? Thank you. Thank you for your question. 0772 300 305. This is in terms of the Inland Revenue Amendment Bill. And this is what the Supreme Court had to say at the end. Nevertheless, we are mindful that the court is the last bulwark to protect the rule of law and prevent any breach of public trust. Corruption and wastage of public finance must be addressed and violators dealt with according to law, irrespective of standing. In order to do so, the jurisdiction of court must be properly invoked in the appropriate proceedings. That's again what the Supreme Court had to say.
The beauty is in the last sentence in both judgments. The first one, that the court shall continue to exercise its constitutional role as the watchful guardian over the executive and administrative action. And the other one said, in order to do so, the jurisdiction of the court must be properly invoked by appropriate legislation.
Very serious stuff. Let's go for a quick break, and we'll see you on the other side. We're in conversation with the tax expert, Mr. N.R. Gajendran. See you on the other side.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
25% for 2 months, 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD.
9 underworld gangsters including Kimula Ale Guna and Ladia arrested by India's National Investigation Agency. Police investigation continues to uncover Shafter's killers. Police continue to search students to crack down on drugs. State Minister Geeta calls to arrest traffickers. Buddhist and Pali University to be restructured. Coal crisis emerges. Trade unions warn of 10-hour power cuts in future.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with the tax expert, Mr. N.R. Gajendran. Mr. Gajendran, Sri Lanka has a dollar crisis. There's no other way of looking at it. We don't have enough dollars. The available fuel is being rationed, the economy has contracted, and the President of Sri Lanka says that he has no forward plan. How on earth are we going to
You have said that in abstract, but he said so, and thereafter he explained what has to be done.
All right, what did he say?
So, basically he's saying we have to go for exports, diversify exports, and we have to raise our revenues. But definitely I can't remember all what he said, but he said something.
Okay, so there's a rationality.
And also,
but isn't it a bit of a joke? You say we must expand on our exports. So let's take tea, for example. Yeah. We need, the tea industry
said he must go for the power, we alternate form of power.
Yes.
And
indeed.
So
he locks us, it's almost perversely crazy.
Yeah.
He locks us in
if you read the whole statement.
Yes, okay. But I'm saying, Mr. Gajendran, it's almost perverse. You lock us into a deal with the LNG transaction, for example, for several years at a time. That's simply against the normal, due and established process of state procurement. You can't do that. It sounds blatantly and patently unfair. The tea industry, how on earth? They may be getting more dollars, but let's look at the quantities that are being exported, the quantities that are being harvested. These are being hammered because we didn't have for a while and don't have yet the right amounts of quantity in terms of the fertilizer. It's a bit of a joke. They spend our money, but where on earth do we see what they do? They're being felicitated. They're putting events at the Aragale site. Are they trying to paint a rosy picture when actually 60% of the population are being hit with food challenges?
We have lived beyond our means, no question about it. We have an entitlement culture, and on the side of the people, and the politicians have been like magicians. They have been promising the world and nothing has been delivered. We will get what we deserve, now we are a bankrupt country. So if you are bankrupt, we are going to suffer.
It's a good point you're bringing up there. The former governor of the central bank, and I thought I'd ask you this, now that you mention it, the former governor of the central bank says that there was no need to declare bankruptcy. True? False?
No, well, even if you didn't declare bankruptcy, you have come to the point where you will default. Next round of the payments, we would have defaulted.
But my question to you about that statement is this. When the former governor of the central bank said this, he also had a rationale. He said the money will come in by the sale of this, this, this and this. Same government, different governor of the central bank, same government, presumably same policy. Why hasn't that money come in then?
This is another important point for us. Whether in this country institutions are working or individuals are working. If that was correct, if it was the state, then whoever the governor who was in the chair, that money should have come.
Exactly.
If it is to be said, look here, because a particular person is not there and the money is not coming, that is not the way a country can be run. Institution has to be working. And even the court decisions also saying the administrative institutions are answerable and accountable. You know, we have to be, this accountability has to be enshrined in the constitution and in every administrative decision, whether it is in the parliament, whether the executive or the administrative bodies. In this country, nothing fails if you fail, nothing happens if you fail.
All the meaningful recommendations given by the courts are like pouring water on a buffalo to our politicians who don't even pay their electricity bills. This is straight out from the audience.
No,
there's nothing about being anti-Ranil or anti-anything. Yeah. This is being factual.
So judiciary has stepped up this time. I have not seen judgments or orders using such strong wordings, and it's left to the people to revisit the judiciary when it is appropriate, and we will have to see. Judiciary also will be tested, and I'm sure they're going to put up their hands and do their part. The most important arm of the democracy is the judiciary, because the one side makes the laws, the other one executes it, so the people get caught sandwiched in between. So it is the judiciary is the savior, as it has been told that we are the watchful guardian of the executive, legislature and administrative actions.
All I can say is that the collective might of the people of Sri Lanka must do whatever it is they do in your own religion to say, thank God Almighty for the Supreme Court for at least having said that. Because otherwise these legislators will just do what they want. I'd like them to tell me where they have made their, tightening of their belts. The people are being asked to do that. The innocent protesters at Aragal have been hounded and being arrested on all sorts of charges. But those who broke the law and who created a breach of the peace, coming out of temple trees armed with sticks and poles and whatever have you, and attacked the innocent protesters, they haven't been charged. The Easter Sunday bombers, there's been no legal end to that, no legal resolution. And what on earth are these people doing, Mr. Gajendran? How do we get them to do something?
This is what happens when in the government's institution do any budget and expenditure. That amount is spent. Now, this time our expenditure is going up, increasing over 1.4 trillion, with the revenues going on, being increased in absolute term only 1.3 trillion. Now, once it is in the budget, people will spend. What I'm saying now is not an isolated case. Apparently, there a top man in the government has gone for a vacation somewhere. That's okay. But when he had gone, he has taken about 35 security staff and 7 or 8 vehicles. This is what I was told by the people who were there. So that is again because there is a budget, it's spent. So there has to be accountability and answerability, which has to be brought in, and as the multilateral agencies are saying, the corruption vulnerabilities has to be really tracked and traced and put into order if Sri Lanka is to come out of this. Otherwise, the ease what we are having now, temporary ease because of we don't repay debts, and as you said, we have curtailed our expenditure, we have prohibited imports and rationalized the thing. This can't last for long unless we put the house into order. Even the lenders, the multilateral agencies are watching what we are doing.
I'd like to see, our constitution says that we are all equal before the law, right? Agreed?
Yes.
Then, why aren't the parliamentarians paying any taxes?
No, they are paying taxes.
Are they?
Yeah, they are paying taxes. Not that they are not paying taxes.
They pay taxes?
Everyone who earns over 100,000 rupees.
So they'll have to pay?
Yeah, they will have to pay.
Well, I hope that they're going to put it out then, because thus far they hide all their asset declarations and so on. Do you think that the Inland Revenue Department will go after these people?
I don't know whether they are going...
Does Parliament operate a PAYE system?
I'm not quite sure. They are not employees to operate a PAYE system.
So then they'll be... Yeah. We'll have to rely on their integrity to pay their taxes.
I believe they will be... the Parliament may have to withhold taxes if the amount is more than 100,000, 5%.
So they'll have to pay taxes.
If it is, your payment can be either contract of employment or contract for services. So this is, if it is for services, then it will has to be withheld. If there is anything in the line of employment, then it will be coming under the mandatory advanced personal
income tax. What about all the
tax.
perks that they get? Do you think that's taxable?
Yeah, it has to be taxed like in the case of...
anybody else?
Yes. Cash and non-cash benefit has to be taxed. But in the case of service providers, the perks don't come in, like in the case of employees.
Here's another one. In other countries like Singapore, taxpayers are having a card so that they get recognized as taxpayers and are given various priorities wherever they go. But here in Sri Lanka, in all the public places, only the public servants, the legislators, are recognized and taxpayers are not recognized.
Not so, because in the past it has happened where they were given a card where they could have used to, when they visited public institution, they would have got priorities, and over a certain amount you paid taxes, you had a certain duty-free concession or vehicle, and also you had they used to give in your traveling abroad, they used to give some lounges, there was some recognition, and even they were invited to the various places and recognized. Even now this government is also doing something like that.
Last question, very quick one. Hasn't the government willfully wiped out the middle class?
Yeah, I think the middle class is getting wiped out not only in Sri Lanka, the world over, because
but honestly, I don't know about you, but I don't care about the rest of the world.
Yes, it's here the middle class is, because the middle class also is sort of
challenged.
They are also vanishing from the country to a great extent, because as I told you, their value of money has dropped, and they are unable to meet their daily basic necessities to enjoy a minimum quality of life.
Mr. Gajendran, thank you very much for being on Newsline Live.
Thank you for us.
We've much enjoyed it. Some of the things that you said may not have gone down well, but what to do? That's all the
mainly I read the decision.
You read that, and that is the highlight. I hope that it's highlighted in the news and everywhere else, because there is at least some form of guardianship to help the people, and that's coming from the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. Take care, have a great evening, and as always, God bless you all.